What's up YouTube? Today we'll be making the next part of our Unity tutorial on how to make your first game in Unity. Today we'll be making player collision detection and on collision enter for those who have not and are not familiar with that. Let's jump into Unity. Okay, so what we left off with is that we now have our player moving, we can rotate the cylinder, and we have obstacles to dodge. So what you want to do is you want to start out by double clicking into your scripts folder and creating a new C# script and name this collision detection with no spaces. And once it's fully loaded, we can open up in Visual Studio. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to create a new variable, and that is going to be referencing our scripts that we're going to use, so we can detect when the players hit something and turn off his movement and the rotation that the player does. So you want to make a public player movement, because that's what the script's titled and you want to be referencing it. And you can title it whatever you want. For this, I'm going to be making it movement player. There you go. And the other one that we're going to want to reference is the public cylinder rotate. And I'm going to call this rotate cylinder. Very simple. So what you want to do next is you want to delete these voids that are preset into this. And from there you're going to want to create a void on collision enter, those parentheses like that. Now this next code that I'm going to be typing, it may seem a bit confusing at first when I give it to you and you enter it in, but I'll explain it after we fully implemented it. So what you want to write first is collision and then collision like that. And then what you want to do next is you're going to want to create an if statement. So you're going to go if, and what you're going to put is collision dot collider dot game object dot layer equals layer mask dot name to layer, and you're going to want to put the obstacle, because that's what all our obstacles are. And of course it's an if statement, so we need to create our little curly black brackets, and inside them we're going to write our player movement. Oh wait, oops. Movement player, or the script we're referencing up here, and we're going to put enabled and set it equal to true. And the thing is, when you're doing if statements and stuff like that, one equals mark means you're setting the variable to either true or false, whatever it may be, and two of them is basically you use them in an if statement to say, is this a certain thing? You're not actually setting it to that certain thing, such as, like, I could write if movement player equals true, and then I could go on making a statement like make it false, something like that. But if I were to make it so that it was a single one, then this would mess up the whole thing and it wouldn't be able to run properly. So that's just some background code, and the other one we're going to want to be doing is turn off our rotate cylinder through this code. And so to explain what is happening up in this if statement and on the void on collision enter is that when the script is happening and it is awake as the object is set, which is when you press the play button in this case, it is asking whenever there's a collision, we're going to want to get the collision info, and from that, if the collision and the collider of the game object, we detect the collider, which then leads us to detect the game object. And once we have that, we can ask the layer what it is, and I'll show you what the layer is later. And it will ask if it's equal to this layer mask, our obstacle. Now, it's not the name of the object, but it's the layer that we'll be creating later, and if it is, then it will do this, what we have in these brackets. And the reason we're setting it to true and false here is, and not on void start, we're doing the opposite, is that as soon as the object's awake, it will set it to its default case, and that means these will be both set to true. And my bad, we'll need to set this one to false as well. So if you save that and head back into Unity, and if we drag this collision detection onto the player, we can head into the player, do under the collision detection, drag our cylinder rotate into rotate cylinder, and movement player from up here, player movement, drag it down, if it will move, into the movement player. So now that we have that reference, we can go under our cylinder and click on obstacle, and what we're going to want to do is create a new layer. I've already done that, and to do that you click add layer. I've already made one. The one that you can change is the user layer 8. That's the closest one to all these that you can change, and you're just going to type in obstacle, hit enter, and head back into the obstacle and assign it the layer up here to obstacle. So now that we have that working, we're going, just a personal preference I have is to change the if we head into our camera, go over to our camera component and head over to the clear flags. I like to change it from a skybox, or what we're seeing from right here, to solid color, because it adds the effect that you can't really see what's too far ahead of you, so you have to remain not knowing what's happening at later in the level. So right now this is kind of boring. If we head into it and we go play, we can head over here. Once we've hit something and it recognizes that the layer is an obstacle, if we head over to our player by clicking pause, we can see that both the cylinder rotate and the player movement is disabled, and we want to be able to make this player stopped moving more recognizable. So we're going to stop our game, head over to our obstacles, and move down here, and with each cube you're going to want to add a rigid body, and with that rigid body you're going to want to freeze the rotation that's under constraints right here on every single axis, so that it won't fly away when you're rotating it or anything you don't necessarily want to do. And you're going to want to check off use gravity, because we don't want them falling off. And if you want to apply that to all of the cubes, that is what you're going to need to do for this next part. I will just skip ahead to the video because I have already done that. So now that we've applied them all to every single cube, as you can see, rigid body on all of these, if we want to minimize that again and head into our play, we can now tell that once we've actually hit the objects, our player stops and we can see them go flying, and that makes it a whole lot more interesting than just hitting it and nothing happens. Alright, that's going to be about it for this video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. Leave a like and comment down below what you'd like to see a tutorial on in the future. And thank you for watching my video.